You said your grandparents, so I'm guessing that your grandfather was also involved in your life, though, right?
He was. He kind of was just kind of like an idol background person for me in my life. Like me and my grandma were really close. She was a Pisces too. Um, and then I later found out that he had inappropriately touched like people in our family. So
Wait, the grandfather?
yeah, there was never like sex, but it was inappropriate touching. And so this whole time I had this idea that my grandparents were these angels, and it's not that they in their own right they weren't, drinking. But
the whole
I'm sorry,
thing.
it's just a lot of truth.
We've been drinking before this even started,
but it's like, so now I really don't have much to say in a positive way about him, just because I didn't learn the truth until I was like 26, 27. So it's like there's all these secrets. I hate secrets. But yeah, that's why I never really talked about him. I was really close to my grandma. That was like.
Rita told me to ask you, how did you feel before you came here? What was your expectations coming into this thing?
Nervous about what we were going to talk about, because I was on your YouTube channel. I saw where you guys did a 4-hour live about what I get in child support. So in my mind, I already was kind of prejudging you, like, great, you just want to tear me apart, just like everybody else. So when I finally landed, get to the airport, Prince was like, he's outside to take you to the hotel. I was like, I'm not riding with him. I don't know. I'm not going with him. I don't know. I'm like, why aren't you here?
I did not notice, Rita.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not riding with him. And that's why I was on the phone with him. I was like, fuck that. I'm like, I've been through so much shit. And then so Prince was like, well, he's outside, so maybe just ride and see. Because Prince, sometimes he lets me go through my theatrics, and once I kind of get back to a neutral point, I'm ready to go. So as I hang up the phone with him, before I hang up the phone with him, I was like, well, I swear to God, Prince, I'm not playing anymore. If I have to cuss him out in the car, if I got to tell him about himself, I will.
You're a firecracker.
Yes, because I was like, fuck that. I'm not about to be. I was like, the disrespect is done. I was like, today is the day. So once I got in the car and we talked, it was like that 20, 30 minutes flew by, and I felt so comfortable coming into this interview because you read my book.
I swear to God, you exhibited none of that. Like, if you hadn't have told me that, right? If Rita hadn't have told me to ask you that, I would have not known at all.
I wonder if
because
that's scary.
in the car, you were just like a little baby.
Well, I wanted to keep an open mind.
Well, Prince is your guardian angel, apparently, because you was just like a little baby. You was like water.
Yeah.
You was just flowing. You was chilling. You was comfortable. Mm-hmm. The whole 9 yards.
But I think that also comes from like trusting men and then having your trust betrayed in different ways, different layers. So I feel like for me, I actually haven't talked about this, but now it's just coming up. But I had, oh my God, that might be a heavy thing to say. But basically I had a guy best friend who like touched me when I was asleep, like before my 30th birthday. And
wait, what?
Like recently, like a few months ago. And it fucked my whole view of men up, because it's like I already went through so much stuff with heartache, and then I had this friend who 10 plus years who violated me when I was sleeping. He didn't know I was awake, because when I drink I wake up at like 3-4 in the morning. It's weird. So I was telling Prince, I'm like, I don't want to get in the car, I'm afraid. Like that's the root of it. It was afraid. I'm like, what if he takes me and I'm in a ditch? What if he wants to hurt me? What if all this fear was playing out? So that was the core. It had nothing to do with you personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just like, I'm afraid. I can't trust men. Men aren't safe. I don't want to ride with him. Why the fuck didn't you tell me I was riding with him?
So wait. Let's back up, right? Because one of the things that I've been talking about on my platform extensively, and I've been getting a lot of pushback from it, simply because I think that it's a problem in communities in general that people don't talk about, right? And one of the things that I was telling you when you jumped in the car and we was just kicking in and having a conversation, because I like to build relationships with people, right? One of the things I was telling you was that I just like to go based off of however the flow of the conversation go, right? But to bring it back, one of the things I've been highlighting in the community is that the thing that people have not been talking about is the things that go on in our households.
Yep.
Or behind the scenes that a lot of people cover up. It's that uncle, or, everybody know that guy in the family, and it's a lot of people that's been touched or molested or dealt with in a way that's not, you know what I'm saying, best for that kid when they grow up. And the women and the guys too grow up with a lot of trauma, and that prevents them from being able to experience life in a way that they're supposed to, because that's not something that a child is supposed to go through, right?
It's hard to connect.
So you saying that though, right, gives a lot of perspective, and I think that feeds into, or it opens up conversations based off of the things that people are experiencing, but we automatically throw a label on and say, yo, she's no good, or you throw them out, or we don't try to understand the trauma behind or why people think what they think. The only thing that we do is we automatically judge them, and then we throw them to the wolves.
Yeah.
So you saying that though, kind of, you know what I'm saying, speaks to the thing that we've been talking about for a long time. But let me back up, right? Because one of the goals for me was to understand you, right?
That's the first.
I'm not interested.
All this stuff.
I'm not interested in the headlines and baby mama, baby dad. I don't care nothing about that shit. Like, that don't mean nothing to me. I'm interested in finding out who you are, why you think the way you think, why you're a firecracker sometimes, why you like a little baby when you get into the right environment, when you get comfortable. I want to know everything about that. So I've read your book. I told you I read your book when we were in the car, right? And I got so many questions that may not even have been addressed in the book, right? But just to bring it back for a lot of the people that are not familiar with your story, you grew up, or you were born in Ohio, right?
Ontario, Ohio.
And then you moved to Mississippi.
Ocean Springs, Mississippi.
Why did you move to Mississippi?
So my mom was in an abusive relationship, and she had asked us, like, hey, do you guys want to move down south with your grandparents? And at the time, we just thought we were moving to be with our grandparents. Had no idea what she was going through. So she had asked if we randomly wanted to move to Mississippi, and we did. And what I also didn't understand when I wrote the book too was how controlling my grandma was, and how she kicked my mom like out of the picture and was like, you aren't consistent. We don't, like, basically just wouldn't let my mom be a mom. So I moved to, I think, the end of 3rd or 4th grade to Mississippi, and my grandparents raised me from there because they didn't let my mom, they didn't let her be involved.
You mentioned your grandmother and your mother, but I never really hear you mention your grandfather. I heard you mention I read about your father, but you only mentioned him briefly in the book because you talked about, you know, you writing him, and then eventually, you know, you trying to have a relationship
with my
him.
dad, yeah.
Yeah, and then that quickly expired. You said your grandparents, so I'm guessing that your grandfather was also involved in your life, though, right?
He was. He kind of was just kind of like an idle background person for me in my life. Like, me and my grandma were really close. She was a Pisces too. And then I later found out that he had inappropriately touched like people in our family. So
wait, the grandfather?
Yeah. There was never like sex, but it was inappropriate touching. And so this whole time I had this idea that my grandparents were these angels, and it's not that they, in their own right, they weren't. Drinking. But
the whole
I'm sorry,
thing.
it's just a lot of truth.
We've been drinking before this even started.
But it's like, so now I really don't have much to say in a positive way about him, just because I didn't learn the truth until I was like 26, 27. So it's like all these secrets. I hate secrets. But yeah, that's why I never really talked about him. I was really close to my grandma. That was like